Empire Tales. Crusades, the holy wars that changed the world. The winds of change swept across the medieval world, carrying with them a storm of faith, ambition, and blood. At the crossroads of three major religions, a land of unparalleled significance, Jerusalem, would become the focal point of a series of wars that would forever alter the course of history. In the year 1095, the call for a holy war rang out across Europe. The Pope, Urban II, urged Christians to rise up and reclaim the Holy Land from the Muslim rulers who controlled it. What followed was not just a series of battles, but a long and bitter struggle, a struggle that would see the world's greatest powers clash, armies march across continents, and the very soul of Europe torn apart. This is the story of the Crusades, the holy wars that spanned centuries and would leave an indelible mark on the face of the world. The call to arms. It began with a plea for help. The Byzantine Empire, a once great power, was under siege by the forces of Seljuk Turks. The Byzantine Emperor, Alexios I Komnenos, turned to the west for aid. He asked Pope Urban II for assistance, and what came in response would change the world forever. At the Council of Clermont in 1095, Urban II made a declaration that would echo through the ages. God wills it. Those words set into motion one of the most extraordinary mobilizations in human history. From nobles to peasants, from knights to commoners, men across Europe answered the call to arms, compelled by both religious fervor and promises of glory, riches, and absolution of sins. The First Crusade was born. The journey begins. The journey to the Holy Land was not a quick one. It took months, even years, for the Crusaders to reach their destination. The Crusades' ranks swelled with men of all classes. Knights from France, peasantry from England, and soldiers from across Europe gathered in one massive force. For many, it was a pilgrimage as much as a battle. They crossed vast stretches of land, endured harsh climates, faced constant threats, and, at times, even turned on one another. But the promise of redemption, the belief that their sins would be forgiven, kept them moving forward. The journey was long. The hardships were many. But they pressed on, through Asia Minor and into the heart of the Byzantine Empire, where they would face the first true test of their resolve. Siege of Nicaea and Antioch. The first major battle for the Crusaders was the Siege of Nicaea in 1097, where they faced the Seljuk Turks. It was a bloody victory for the Crusaders, but one that would cost them dearly. The siege taught them the brutal realities of war, the starvation, the disease, the psychological toll of war. After Nicaea, the Crusaders marched on to Antioch, one of the most fortified cities in the region. For months, they laid siege to the city, facing near impossible odds. The battle for Antioch would go down in history as one of the most intense and desperate sieges of the entire Crusades. But after months of relentless struggle, the city finally fell. The Crusaders had their first major victory. Yet, this was only the beginning. The Siege of Jerusalem. After years of bloodshed, the Crusaders finally reached their ultimate goal, Jerusalem. The holy city of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam was in the hands of Fatimid Caliphate forces, and the Crusaders could see their prize just beyond the city walls. For the Crusaders, this was more than a city. It was a symbol of faith, a place where Christ had lived, died, and risen again. For Muslims, it was an important center of their faith, one of their holiest cities. The Siege of Jerusalem in 1099 was the ultimate test of the Crusaders' will. The walls of Jerusalem were formidable, and the defenders within were ready for battle. The Crusaders encircled the city, laying siege for weeks. The brutal famine, disease, and constant skirmishes took a toll on both sides. But after nearly a month of relentless attacks, the Crusaders finally broke through the city's defenses. The result was nothing short of catastrophic. The city was overrun, and a massacre ensued. Thousands of Muslims and Jews were killed in the streets. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest site in Christianity, was taken, and Jerusalem was claimed by the Crusaders. The city was re-established as a Christian kingdom, and God's will had seemingly been fulfilled. The aftermath and further Crusades. But the victory at Jerusalem was bittersweet. The Crusaders had accomplished their goal, but the task of maintaining control over Jerusalem was far from simple. Muslim forces, led by figures like Saladin, would not stand idly by. The Second Crusade began shortly after the fall of Jerusalem in an attempt to defend the city, but it ultimately failed to regain control. The Third Crusade, with famous leaders like Richard the Lionheart of England and Philip II of France, was one of the most legendary military campaigns of the era. But despite a valiant effort, Jerusalem remained under Muslim control. The Crusades continued for nearly 2 centuries, with intermittent campaigns and shifting control over key territories in the Holy Land. By the end of the 13th century, the Crusaders' influence waned, and the Muslim forces had successfully reclaimed most of the land. The enduring legacy of the Crusades. Though the Crusades ended in failure for many of the Crusader states, their impact was profound. The Crusades spurred the growth of medieval knightly orders, the establishment of powerful monarchies, and the spread of Roman Catholic influence. They also fostered cultural exchange between the East and West, bringing back knowledge, technology, and even food like sugar and spices to Europe. The wars brought about religious intolerance and violent clashes, but they also opened new doors for trade, commerce, and ideas. The story of the Crusades was not just about battles. It was about faith, ambition, and the complexities of human conflict. It was a war for the soul of civilization itself. The Crusades, a tale of faith, glory, and tragedy. The Crusades were not just wars for land. They were wars for the soul of civilization. Wars that forever changed the relationship between Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Wars that altered the course of history. Headphone listen now to hear the full, dramatic tale of the Crusades, the holy wars that changed the world. If you love cinematic history storytelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more legendary tales from the empires of the past.